So today let's go over some guidelines of office etiquette. And the office pretty much exists for the purpose of productivity. And one of the things that is really going to hamper productivity is morale. And if people are not adhering to these guidelines of etiquette, it lowers morale. And when morale is low, productivity suffers, etc., etc. So for purposes of discussion, we're going to go over three roles. And the three roles are the boss, the peer, and the expert. Okay. Now the boss is the person who has legitimate authority over you. This is a person who basically, let's just keep it simple, decides whether you're going to stay or whether you're going to go. Right? That's the boss. These guidelines don't really apply to the boss because it's a situation where you're not going to really change somebody's management style all that much. Can you tolerate it? You stay. If you can't really tolerate it, then you go. It's kind of that simple. The expert is kind of a gray area, okay? Because the expert really is defined as somebody where the value is going one way from the expert to you, but there's no value coming back from you to the expert, okay? You don't do anything for the expert. The expert only provides to you, okay? So that's kind of a gray area. No, they don't have legitimate authority over you, but they have sort of that expert authority. And the last group is the majority of people, and that's going to be the peers. And the peers is for the most part what these guidelines are going to apply to. Now the first area of etiquette is going to be the phone. All right? I guess we'll start out with don't call people on the phone. All right. If you need something, you can chat them. You can email them. They're going to get like they're in the thought process. They can hear themselves to the side. Okay, a little ding or whatever, and they know. Okay, I need to address something, but not right away. Okay. That phone call is very intrusive because now it's going to keep ringing. I'm in this thought process, and I have to answer this. And it's probably some question that doesn't need to be called on the phone. It's probably could have easily been answered over email or by chat, right? If you have to call, do not leave a voicemail because voicemail systems can be quite burdensome to go through and listen and delete the message. Chances are, if you're the type of person that can't formulate your thoughts into a concise chat or email, you're probably the type of person that's going to ramble on in a voicemail, and you don't want to put somebody through that, especially if they can't delete your voicemail till the end. Some providers are just like that. So, if it's unpreventable, if you must call someone on the phone, start with a text. Say, hey, look, I need this. The recipient can kind of sense the urgency of it, but they don't get the phone call. And then you can call. Okay, you may not see the text, but then after the phone call, they'll go back and look and say, okay, oh yeah, well they did text me first. Okay. You've given them a few seconds or a couple minutes to address it if they can. They're probably going to call you back, right? But at least you've given them that little warning, right, before you've ambushed them in a phone call. Now, when speaking on the phone, we have to start with an apology. I'm sorry for calling you after hours. I'm sorry for calling you on the weekend, whatever. Start with an apology. Don't just start with your needs. Just because it's important to you doesn't mean it's important to them, all right? And then obviously thank them, which most people for the most part are doing anyway. The last thing I'm going to recommend is if you find yourself constantly picking up the phone to call people and you can't address this in an email or a chat, then chances are you need to start looking at yourself and seeing, do I have my house in order, or am I constantly coming up with these frantic last minute needs that I have to call somebody for? The next area that we're going to address is going to be the email. Okay. Now, first and foremost, don't CC the boss. Okay. If you need something from somebody, don't send them an email CCing their boss. All right. That's more so if they're not responsive, or if they refuse to address whatever you need, or there's a conflict. Okay. But we want to start out sort of man to man, right? And then if it can't be resolved man to man, then Okay, you can tell your boss, say, hey, look, this person is responsible, blah, can you kind of, and then it becomes boss to boss. So we go kind of from man to man to boss, if necessary. We don't want to go man to, or woman to man, boss, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is this is a sign off. Okay, I know a lot of people do this, but you don't want to use best as a sign off. Best basically means F you. Okay, it means basically you're insignificant amount of time for you. If you're the boss addressing a minion, okay, thank you, you know, best, that's totally acceptable. Okay, but if you're a peer, all right, you don't really want to use best, because that almost implies that this person is particularly significant, right? So try to avoid best as a sign off. And the main thing is the subject line, and this is really key. Do not use a one word like issue as the subject line. Well, you know, what's your issue? Do not, you know, or question. And you get this a lot, you know, people will, you know, the email will come in and it just says one word, question. Well, what's your question, right? Or issue. Well, you might as well not even have a subject line at that point. Because if the person can't formulate a proper subject line, then chances are they're going to just ramble on in paragraph form in the body of the email, and you're not going to understand it. It's going to require, you know, a meeting or a phone call or whatnot, and it's going to tend to get pushed towards the end of the day for somebody who's got a lot on their plate, because they're going to get to the items that they can quickly tackle, or they know that it's important. They're going to get to those, and then all these other, you know, questions and issues, they're going to save that for the end, and then they're going to say, okay, send me a screenshot or give me more detail or whatever. And they're going to send you a one-word answer, and that's going to drag on the text. So you're not even going to get your answer, right? So think about it. When you craft a subject line, here's a guideline. What is happening that shouldn't be happening? Or what is not happening that should be happening, right? So you want to be concise. So an example is like, you know, would you happen to have a copy of report, you know, presentation ABC, or let's say I'm unable to find a copy of presentation ABC in Documentum folder 123. All right, so that's a clearly descriptive subject line. Let's say I see that coming into my inbox. Oh, okay, then maybe they don't have access to this document and folder. Oh, I happen to have a copy of this presentation. I'm just going to shoot that email right back. And now, because of that descriptive subject line, they've gotten what they need almost instantly, right? There's been almost no wait time. But let's say they had just put us in the subject line Documentum question. And I don't know what this is. And then you go, they ramble on and on in the body of the email. Well, go to this folder. I logged in and this isn't coming. Okay, I've already lost interest. My interest has waned. So that goes into the end of the day pile, which means be more descriptive. Send me a screenshot, and then we tackle it the next day. Okay, so it could be 12 hours or 24 hours before they get their answer, right? So make sure that you're very descriptive in your subject line. Next area of etiquette is going to be the meeting. All right. Now, number one, if you're an attendee, do not arrive early and then engage the host. Okay, the host, whether it's a virtual meeting or a in-person meeting, they didn't open up the room, you know, early to converse with you. Okay, they open up the room just to kind of get it out of the way, let people file in. And they're going to kind of do, you know, they have, you know, their mental preparation to go through what they're going to talk about, how they're going to run the meeting, and so forth. They didn't invite, or they didn't open this early to make small talk or answer other questions and stuff like that. Okay, they have other things to do. You have to work under that assumption. So and the other thing is, you know, if I'm running a meeting and I notice you're here 10 minutes early, it almost tells me that you don't really have a lot to do. All right. The next thing on the meeting is, if you find yourself talking too much, you got to remind yourself that more airtime doesn't always mean more value. So a lot of times I may give a status, as if we're doing like a around the room thing, of, okay, so presentation 123 is 75% complete, and it should be, you know, on the client's desk at the end of the week. And that's it. Now, if people need more detail, they can certainly ask for it. Happy to provide it. But for purposes of that meeting, I'm going to start off just being very concise, and that's it. Okay? So if you find yourself blathering on and not adding any value, you're just kind of there to hear yourself talk. That's not productive. Okay? And the last couple of things is if you're late, okay, it's okay to be late. You have other obligations. I get it. But don't ask for a recap, okay? If it's a 1 hour meeting and you arrive 30 minutes late, please don't make people relive the first 30 minutes of the meeting for your benefit. Just come in late, take in the last half of the meeting, and then ask a colleague to kind of catch you up on, is there anything that was pertinent to me in the first 30 minutes, right? Totally acceptable. If you're the host, your primary objective over everything else is to get everybody out 5 minutes early. On time is not enough, because let's say your meeting is scheduled from 10 to 11. You have to assume that your attendees have a meeting from 11 to 12, right? And even if it's a virtual meeting, you say, okay, well, if I let everybody out at 11, they can just pop onto their 11 o'clock meeting. No. Virtual or in person, people still have to use the restroom. People still have to, kind of freshen up. People still have to get their thoughts together before going, and their, files and materials together before going to the next meeting. Make sure that you get people out of there 5 to 10 minutes early. All right. A lot of times people, hosts, in fact, they will kind of like, they'll be done in 40 minutes out of an hour meeting. And so, well, while everybody's here, let's talk about this. No, unless that's a 5-10 minute thing, don't just start talking about something else. And if we also find yourself saying towards the end, okay, I know we're running to the end of the meeting. Well, if you know you're running to the end of the meeting, don't keep blathering on and have people running over time. And I've had hosts say, oh, well, I know we're out of time here. Well, if you know we're out of time, cut the damn thing off, right? Okay, you get the point on the meetings, right? The last area of etiquette is the assumption of authority. And the assumption of authority, it typically stems from somebody who's being sort of groomed for a leadership position. They go take a class, and that class says, well, if you behave like a leader, people will think of you as a leader, and they will promote you to a management or supervisory position, okay? And I'll be frank with you, in larger companies, right, the larger company, you can kind of snow people with that, and you can kind of move up. And I've seen before my eyes many people who really aren't producers, that don't really add real value, but they're able to posture and talk, and they move up very, very well. However, right, and you're going to get a lot of sort of, I guess, support or assent from sort of the cogs that are kind of there for the paycheck. They do their thing. They don't really have any aspirations to do much, at least within that organization. And say, okay, well, this person is behaving like a leader, therefore they must be the next leader, therefore I must follow suit, blah, 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 right? However, the people you're going to alienate are the producers, and the producers are the important people. Those are the people that are actually producing, right? And they're going to think, well, this leadership, the next supervisory role should be based on merit, not on posturing and articulation. And so when you alienate the producers, well, now productivity suffers. So I've actually known of cases where somebody was being considered for a supervisory position, and the actual producers that were, let's face it, more qualified, have actually said, if this person, this person is not qualified to task me. So manager, take that for what it's worth, right? So, a couple things. You ask, you don't demand, all right? Is it possible that you can get me a copy of report, ABC? That's asking. Demanding would be, can you get me a copy, give me a copy of ABC by close of business, whatever. No. You're a peer. You don't have legitimate authority. You ask, you don't demand. Don't be a kicker. You're not assigning people stuff. You can ask them to help you with something, but you're not in a position to assign them something. And if you do, and if they agree, okay, that's on them, absolutely don't start taking credit, because people know who's doing the work. And if you assume credit for something, that's not good. That's not healthy for morale. If somebody is doing something. So let's say I've got 20 things on my plate. Somebody offers and says, hey, you know what, I can take this off your plate. I'm very familiar with this. Then guess what? The next status meeting we have, I am going to sing their praise. And thank you so much, you know, Joe, for taking this off my plate. You know, I had so much stuff to do, and he did a great job, and you know, I really appreciate that. And that's going to go a long way, and that's going to be a lot better than if you assume, you know, or you act as if you did it and nobody questions it, because people know. All right, and then another thing is, don't use the finger. Okay, the finger is reserved for somebody with legitimate authority. Let's say a client, right? If I need to see the end client about something, so again, the person who has authority to keep me or relieve me of duty, right? And I see, well, okay, is he in the middle of something? Is he not? It's kind of hard to tell, right? So I'll kind of hover in his peripheral vision, and if he gives me the finger, right? You know, it's kind of like this, like, hold on, you know, wait for me, get it? That's cool, right? And then maybe, you know, circle back later to see how he's doing. However, if you're not the boss who has legitimate authority and you give somebody the finger, not good. Okay, you can give somebody the whole hand with eye contact, right? Because the finger almost implies no eye contact. Whole hand, no eye contact, and just kind of a little nod, right? It's like, okay, just give me a second, you know, kind of mouth the words, right? Or just like, a second, right? That's totally acceptable. You just don't want to give the aloof finger, right, for obvious reasons. The last thing, and I've seen this done before, is if you don't have the authority to do so, if you're not the actual boss or end client, right, don't schedule, you know, a team lunch, a team building happy hour, anything like of that nature that implies that you are the leader, because you're not, right? You're trying to be, but you're not actually, right? So it's totally acceptable to say, does anybody want to go to lunch at so-and-so tomorrow, right? That's completely acceptable in the form of an email. However, what's not acceptable is if you were to make that into a calendar invite and label it as a team building lunch, right? Team building lunch tomorrow, blah, 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 you know, that, you know, if you can't make it, okay, forget that. You're not in a position to do that. You're lowering morale, right? Same thing would be like, you know, another flavor would be like a team building happy hour, okay? Perfectly acceptable to send an email saying, hey, who wants to get together for happy hour at, you know, such and such place Friday after work? Fine, right? But if you label it and you send a calendar invite as a team building happy hour, not good. Don't do it, right? So those are some of the things that I think will help improve morale in the workplace. And if you're guilty of these things, you know, please correct the behavior. And if you're not, and you see this, you may want to refer people to this video and just kind of give them a heads up. Hey, look, you know, this is kind of outside the realm of good decorum for the office.